Mech games are awesome, and I love everything about them, but let's be real, they're kind of a niche. Outside of Armored Core's big return, we've been kind of waiting for the genre to pick back up. Even the Gundam series, as big of a franchise as it is, hasn't really released anything that hits the same mark, and I get why. Making a good mech game is a big undertaking. You've got to nail the movement, the weight, the weapons, the style, the customization, and still make it all feel satisfying. That's why I started digging through the indie scene. Because while the big studios take their sweet time, indie devs have been out here doing some wild creative stuff with the mech genre. Some are fast-paced and flashy, others are weird and cozy, but most importantly, they all bring something new to the table. And that's the beauty of indie games in general. They're scrappy, experimental, and full of heart. That freedom leads to some genuinely cool games that don't feel like it's trying to check boxes, but just exist because someone really believed in the idea. For variety's sake, I wasn't looking to just round up a bunch of games that feel like Armored Core. I wanted to highlight games that do stuff a little differently, stuff that stand out or take mechs in cool, unexpected directions. Take Lightyear Frontier for example. It's one of those games that caught me off guard. I went in expecting a No Man's Sky style survival loop. Space mech, alien world, gather resources, repeat. But what I got was something way more relaxing. This isn't about shooting aliens or grinding out survival. It's about farming, and more importantly, it's about slowing down and just enjoying the act of existing in a world. What really makes it stand out is how it flips the typical mech fantasy on its head. Instead of piloting some giant war machine built for destruction, your mech is basically a giant sci-fi tractor. It's your all-in-one farming tool, planting crops, mining ores, harvesting alien flora. It's not often you see a mech game lean into the agricultural side of things, and that shift alone makes it feel surprisingly fresh. There's also no hunger meter, no enemies, and no combat. You're just here to live and breathe. You clean up toxic zones, explore at your own pace, and slowly piece together a story through old ruins and scattered artifacts. The narrative isn't in your face, but it's there if you want to engage with it. The light storytelling approach actually adds to the game's relaxing vibe. You're not burdened by some world-ending threat. You're just a quiet farmer doing honest work. The pacing is one of my favorite things about the game. There's never any pressure to rush your progression. Want to focus on farming? Go ahead. Feel like exploring a new biome? Nothing's stopping you. Even the day-night cycle is forgiving. Staying out past midnight doesn't really punish you for exploring late into the night. That said, things can get a bit grindy, especially when your farm gets big. The seed extractor system, in particular, can feel like busy work. Each machine only produces a small batch at a time, and managing dozens of them means clicking through the same multi-step process over and over. Still, even with those rough edges, nothing feels overly punishing. The game gives you space to breathe, and that relaxed, go at your own pace atmosphere continues to shine through, which is probably helped by the audio and visuals leaning hard into a cozy solar punk look. The world feels alive but peaceful, with warm colors, soft lighting, and charming mech animations that make piloting feel tactile. Your mech doesn't roar or stomp. It hums and clanks like a hard-working machine. The music and ambient sounds blend beautifully with the visuals, giving the whole thing this grounded, welcoming tone. It's honestly one of the most inviting mech game atmospheres I've experienced. Sure, it's in early access, but I genuinely think it's already worth it. The game's been receiving updates, the most recent being shifting gears. But while Lightyear Frontier leans into cozy exploration and farming, Mech Engineer goes in the very opposite direction, because it's both my dream and my nightmare. This one really took me by surprise. It's one of those hidden indie gems that doesn't try to wow you with flashy combat or mid-air transformations. Instead, it puts you behind the scenes. War is hell, and you're the one managing it. Just look at this. Where do you even begin? Honestly, I highly recommend looking up a guide just to help you get your bearings, because this game is a real challenge. It throws a lot at you from the start, and the UI doesn't do much handholding. building. Still, once you start learning the ropes and making sense of all the moving parts, it becomes very rewarding. What really hooked me is how much it emphasizes systems thinking over reflexes. It reminds me of games like Darkest Dungeon, where half the battle happens before you even step into the field. And because of that, this game has one of the most in-depth mech customization systems I've ever seen. What makes Mech Engineer stand out is its deep emphasis on preparation. It's not just about building something that looks cool, it's about making something that actually works under pressure. Aside from simply slapping on better weapons or heavier armor, you're diving into the inner workings of a mech, tweaking cooling systems, balancing power distributions, managing heat sinks, selecting ammo types, and fine-tuning efficiency stats. Every choice is a part of an ecosystem of trade-offs. A high-damage cannon might overwhelm your power grid, more armor could protect your pilot, but at the cost of speed and mobility, and they all interact in ways that can make or break a mission. The best part is if something goes wrong out there, it's usually because of a choice you made back in the hangar. That kind of ownership gives every successful mission some real weight. When your mech survives a brutal mission, it feels like all your tinkering paid off. Oh, speaking of combat, it is brutal. Side view, semi-auto battles where all the prep gets put to the test. You can give orders for your pilots to move around, but you're not directly controlling them. So every mistake and every oversight plays out in real time. Either way, prepare for failure, because it's gonna happen whether you like it or not. That mech I spent the last hour tweaking and min-maxing, gone. I've had so many runs end in disaster, and yeah, it can be frustrating, but every failure teaches you something, and little by little, you start to figure it out. You tweak a build, try a different tactic, and suddenly things start clicking. So don't worry if it doesn't make sense right away. Just keep going. Keep learning. Eventually, your mechs will stop falling apart, and you'll start pulling off wins that actually feel earned. But enough with the pseudo spreadsheets. Let's blow up something for once. Time for some Brigador. Brigador is a game I don't hear nearly enough people talk about when it comes to mech titles, and honestly, it deserves way more love. At first glance, it might not scream mecha the way other games do. It's isometric, neon-drenched, and plays more like a tactical twin-stick shooter than a traditional mech sim. But once you actually get into it, it clicks. Brigador is doing something completely different with the genre, and it works. What really sold me was how well it captures the feeling of piloting a giant, heavily armed death machine through a living city you're absolutely about to destroy. The level of destructibility here is wild. Buildings crumble under your treads, vehicles go up in chain reaction explosions, and every single shot you fire just feels powerful. It's loud, chaotic, and insanely satisfying. You're not just fighting enemies, you're tearing down everything around them. And to me, that raw, destructive power is a big part of what mech games should feel like. Brigador also stands out for its tone. This isn't a noble war story. You're a mercenary doing the dirty work for whoever pays the most. Each mission drops you into hostile territory with a custom loadout, and your objective is simple: eliminate the targets and make it out alive. The game even rewards you for causing more destruction. Flattening buildings nets you more cash, and yes, that includes civilians too. Remember, you're not here to be a hero, you're here to do a job and get paid. The aesthetic just ties it all together. That synth-heavy soundtrack by Makeup and Vanity Set is absolutely perfection. It gives the whole game this dark, grimy, retro-futuristic energy that feels like a late-night sci-fi movie you're not supposed to be watching. The pixel art is sharp, the lighting is moody, and everything has this synth vibe that I can't get enough of. At the end of the day, Brigador stands out because it does its own thing. No apologies. If you've ever wanted a mech game that makes combat feel like a job, an explosive and deeply satisfying job, you owe it to yourself to check it out. The best part is that a sequel is already in the works, and I'm genuinely excited to see how they expand on everything that made the first game so special. However, if Brigador is about pure chaos and carnage, Nitro Gen Omega is about precision, style, and heart. I honestly wasn't sure what to expect going in. I've bounced off plenty of tactical RPGs before, but this one got me quick. The whole game feels like a lost 90s anime. Wild mech designs, dramatic poses, and hair so big it probably breaks the laws of aerodynamics. The devs call it spaghetti anime, and yeah, it fits. It's loud, raw, emotional, and it doesn't care about being subtle. The art, the animations, the soundtrack, it all screams cool, but not in a forced way. It knows exactly what kind of story it wants to tell, and leans in hard. And then there's the combat. Instead of standard grid, you're working with a timeline system that feels more like directing an anime episode than playing a tactics game. You queue up actions, movement, attack, support, and then watch it all play out in one slick cinematic burst. It's a turn-based, but it never feels slow. Every move is a mini spectacle, and when you line up the perfect combo, it's like pulling off a finisher in a shonen fight. What really won me over though was the crew. Your mechs aren't just machines, you've got a full team piloting them. Drivers, gunners, engineers, support roles, and every one of them has a personality. They argue, bond, grow stronger, and react to what happens in battle. It's not just about optimizing stats, it's about building a squad you actually care about. In a way, it reminded me a bit of Persona, where spending time with your team outside of combat actually feeds back into their performance. Between missions, you're cooking meals together, doing yoga on the ship, or dealing with random events that somehow manage to be both hilarious and heartfelt. It gives the game this slice of life soul that makes every decision in battle hit harder. So, if you've ever bounced off tactical RPGs like I did, or just want something with a good art style, Nitro Gen Omega is worth your time. It's a game that wears its heart and its oversized shoulder pads on its sleeve, and I loved it for that. But maybe you're craving something a little faster, a little flashier, something that trades turn-based tactics for side-scrolling spectacle. That's where Hardcore Mecha comes in. Hardcore Mecha was one of those games I jumped into without expecting much, just a cool-looking 2D mecha game to kill some time. But a few missions in, I was locked in, dodging lasers, chaining mid-air dashes, launching missiles, and wondering, wait, why is this so good? What hooked me first was the movement. It's responsive in all the right ways. Boosts, dashes, melee combos, evasive maneuvers, it's all fast and fluid, but still feels grounded, like you're actually piloting a metal titan. It reminded me a bit of Mega Man X in how snappy and responsive everything feels. Only now, I'm in a full-blown mech with missiles, beam sabers, and thrusters. The animations sell it too. Everything from the recoil of a punch to the explosion of a missile has weight, and the mecha designs look straight out of a high-end model kit. On top of all that, there's a solid layer of mech customization that gives the game a bit more depth than you'd expect from a 2D action title. Between missions, you can tweak your loadout, changing primary and secondary weapons, swapping mobility systems, adjusting armor types, and more. It's not super complex, but it gives you just enough flexibility to tailor your mech to your playstyle. It's a fun little system that adds that personal touch that most mech games are known for. The story leans unapologetically hard into stereotypical tropes. You play as Tarthur. Yes, I know, very anime. He gets swept into a military conspiracy involving lost tech, shadowy factions, and anime-worthy betrayals. It's not groundbreaking, but it knows exactly what kind of story it's telling, and the animated cutscenes and voice acting give it a ton of charm. It's cheesy, but earnestly so, and that makes it work. What makes Hardcore Mecha stand out, especially among indie mech games, is how confidently it embraces the 2D action platformer format. It's not trying to be Armored Core or Mech Warrior, instead it carves out its own identity with fast-paced gameplay, flashy animations, and a strong sense of style. Every mission feels like you're dropped into an episode of a classic mecha anime, and honestly, we need way more games like like that. Luckily, the 2D mech hits didn't stop there. Out of everything I've played, the last game I'm gonna talk about ended up being my favorite. Metal Bringer is my favorite game out of everything we've talked about. It's kinda janky, the performance stutters a lot, and the game doesn't always feel super polished, but I still kinda love it. It's a roguelite that plays a bit like Vampire Survivors with mechs, and as someone who already sinks way too much time into Vampire Survivors, I just couldn't resist this. You play as Surya, a girl who wakes up from a 1,000-year cryo sleep and starts exploring a post-human world alongside her AI companions. It's not super deep, and honestly, the story is really only there as a placeholder, so let's just talk about the gameplay. You start as a Labor, an AI who can equip 2 weapons and do some solid damage on foot, and while you can upgrade this little guy to be a bit more competent, what you really need is to get into a mech fast. Funnily enough, you don't actually start with a mech, but with a forklift. But eventually, you'll climb into a full-blown mech, or arm. And that's when things really click. Each run is about grabbing upgrades called apps and salvaging parts from defeated mechs. What I really love is how every run feels like you're constantly building momentum. At first, it actually threw me off. I kept expecting certain mechanics you usually see in mech games, like being able to shoot mid-air, but then I found an app that unlocked that exact ability, and suddenly it all clicked. The game wasn't limiting me, it was inviting me to explore. From that point on, I started hunting for more apps, because I was so curious on what other missing features might be hidden out there. These upgrades can be new movement abilities like air dashes or homing missiles, and finding app upgrades that power up both your character and mech in very different ways. Although, if you aren't careful, you could lose all of these if you die. But if you take the time to visit a shop and analyze them mid-run, you can add them to your permanent loadout. It's the same deal with mechs too. If an enemy drops a cool part, you can slap it onto your current rig for the rest of the mission, or analyze it to unlock it back at the base for future setups. Speaking of, there's a surprising amount of mech customization here too, and honestly, it's one of my favorite parts of the game. You're changing weapons, body parts, and even internal apps that tweak your stats or add passive perks. It's all about finding a setup that feels right for how you like to play. I've spent way too much time back at base mixing and matching parts, tweaking stats, and fine-tuning my build. The loop of salvaging, customizing, and testing weird new setups just to see how far I could go really hooked me. Surprisingly, it's the same feeling I got from Mech Engineer, that even a bad run teaches you something, and that steady sense of discovery keeps pulling me back in. Aside from the core gameplay, what really made me smile though is how many of the mech designs clearly take inspiration from classic mecha shows and games. You'll see stuff that feels straight out of Gundam, Armored Core, and even a few oddball designs that feel totally unique. And since the game gives you total full control over your mech's paint job, I actually managed to cobble together something that looks almost exactly like a Rick Dom, and I was way too proud of that. But when it comes to the visuals as a whole, the pixel art is gorgeous, crunchy, and retro in all the right ways, but with a level of detail that makes every explosion and mech swing feel massive. It's got that voxel meets anime style that somehow looks old school and next gen at the same time. That said, the game definitely struggles a bit in the performance department. I noticed a lot of stuttering during the more hectic moments, and I suspect Unreal Engine 5 might be having a tough time with everything going on under the hood. Still, once I turned the graphics down a bit, things smoothed out and it became much more playable, which still looked great regardless. Metal Bringer might not be one of the most unique mecha games I've played recently, but it's easily my favorite out of everything I've talked about here. The way it blends roguelite progression, crunchy pixel graphics, and deep customization just hits all the right spots for me. Every run feels like a new opportunity to tweak my build, try a new combo weapon, or unlock another ridiculous mech part. There's nothing else in the genre quite like it right now, and honestly, I just can't stop playing it. That's what I love about these games. They each bring something different to the table. I think what makes these games special isn't just the mechs, it's how they each approach the genre in their own weird, creative ways. Some mech games are all about fast-paced combat, others lean into exploration or deep customization, and then there are the ones that just want you to farm alien tomatoes in a giant metal suit. If there's one thing I've learned from diving into all these games, it's that mecha isn't really a genre in video games. It's more of a style, a theme that's way more versatile than I thought it would be. Big budget mech games might be few and far between, but I can confidently say that the indie scene is keeping the spirit alive in ways that are just as exciting. But if I missed a game you think more people should know about, drop it in the comments. I'd love to check it out and maybe even include it in a future video. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. This has been Game8, and we'll see you in the next one.